It is my joy and honor to introduce you guys to Pastor Ben Trammell. He is a pastor here at University, and you guys may not know this, but he's been a huge encourager of the Foundry and supporter of the Foundry.
I want the younger generation to be supported by the older, my percussionist over here that is also in his 40s, so we are not welcome at Foundry events without invitations, yes.
Listen, I'm never going to hear the end of it.
No, you won't.
He likes to point out the ish. We could put the
They
age.
say, 39-ish, and I'm like, I'm well in the ish.
But we love Ben, and you may not know Ben, but you should know that Ben loves the Foundry and is a big reason that we've been able to do this work and start gathering together. So we're appreciative of him. Ben, give me like a 30-second, who are you?
Who am I? I am a child of God, sinner in need of grace who, did a prodigal son story at one point and have done both sides of that childhood thing, been the younger brother and the older brother, and now sometimes feel like the dad waiting for kids to come home. And I'm married 18 years deep. So my marriage could come to the Foundry. That's where I'm at. It's graduating
We
from
welcome
high school.
Holly anytime.
And I have 4 children. From 5 is our youngest, and our oldest is about to be 14. Started the pandemic as a cute little boy, and now stinks. Must be like deodorant's no longer optional. So that's our life at the house. Serve here and have been here since 2016. Love San Antonio. I'm from Houston mostly, but the East Texas area, and that's probably enough biography for me.
That's fantastic. I love the description that everyone even got a sensory experience with the deodorant.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Thank you for that.
And he's in the if I put on cologne, it'll cover it phase.
Ooh. Is
yeah,
it Axe?
see, y'all know what that smells
Is it
like.
Axe? We all want to know. The people want to know.
We have like a no Axe policy at the house, but I don't know. No, it's I'll go by there like they smell sweet, and I'm like, that's not soap. That's not soap. You need soap. Yeah.
Well, my last question for you, thank you for that. As you guys know, every week at the table where you're eating, there is a question. This season, we're doing a this or that. I don't even know if you guys ever even talk about this, and you don't have to tell me if you don't, because I take a lot of time printing and cutting these. But we will ask Ben, this or that.
She cares if you don't. If you didn't catch that, I don't know if you could distill that, but she cares.
I'll cry later.
Clearly.
It's okay. The question that we want to ask Ben, Alaska or Hawaii?
Yeah, if we're talking summertime, then it's definitely Alaska. I'm mountains and rivers, not beaches and surfing.
Got it.
Okay.
Well, hope you guys will join me in welcoming Ben. Thank you, Ben, for being here.
Yeah, great to be here. Yeah, so it's super exciting to be here. I have joked quite a bit. I know Parker and I worked together at a previous church in which some of your members were members. In fact, I met Jordan, I'm calling her out, when she was my son's age. And now she works on staff here and is just an amazing woman, and we're just super proud of her. But she was in 8th grade once too, weren't we all? It's kind of, I don't know, at what point you realized that, it was happening to you? This is the fact, do you know your adults? Yeah, I don't know how I don't know how the church, and you're like, no, okay, cool, let's talk about Jordan with the joke in front of people. That's awesome. The clap back on that. I like that. So I'm glad you're using deodorant, Jordan. I'm really excited. I know your parents. They're pretty pumped, too. I just grew up with this notion that there was some, threshold you would cross. And then suddenly you would be the thing that you were trying to grow up to be. And you'd be an adult. And this adult would be a thing. And look, I'm 41. I'll be 42 here in a few months. I have a mortgage, 4 children, been married for almost 20 years. I have a job in which people count on me. And I got to tell you, I never got the medal in the mail. I really did think somebody would be a sword would come and come over my shoulders you're an adult. And I wonder what that does to us. And you guys are in the middle of this. And then I joke around with this crew. I love, Foundry and the leadership. And I love that it's multi-churches. I love it's for our city because I think the notion that somehow the mission of God can be compartmentalized in local spots as competition to other ones is just so not right in the structure of things. And so uniting together and say, it's hard to be 18 to 45 in America. It's really hard in a town that you're not from, maybe, and your parents are there. Maybe it's hard in a town where your parents are from. And I don't know that we always do a great job of honoring not only the contribution, but the struggle of that. You guys have had, and then, older folks, we joke, but they can be pretty, well, I think we're probably good, right? There's no boomers in here. I mean, culturally I'm a boomer, but they can be pretty condescending about, generations that come after. And a lot of that, by the way, if you want to know, is judgment on their own journey. That doesn't make it right that they mistreat you guys or whatever, but some of that is judgment on their own journey because they think about the same thing we're talking about, which is you kept thinking your life was going to happen. Like, I'm going to go to college and then I'll be grown. And then people start to say it to you. Where are you going to go to school? Like, you graduate from high school, you accomplish this long schooling thing. It's like, what are you going to do next? And then when you get to school, it's like, okay, what are you going to do with that? And then if you do that, it's like, okay, but how's that going in your career? When are you going to get married? Does it feel like you're a half a person and must find the other half of your person? Church does this all the time. When are you going to have kids? When are you guys going to have kids over here? You guys working on that? Don't answer out loud, dude. It's cool. He's like, yeah, you hear that? Was a lot of confidence in that laugh. I heard it if you didn't. He's feeling pretty good about himself. I don't know if it's true, but he's feeling good. When is it going to happen? As if you don't keep, progressing, then you're not a full human, and then you never actually get there. And so you have people that have midlife crises. You know when they have them generally? About 60. Do you know what's wrong with that? It's late. It's late. You know what midlife looks like? Me. Right? I'm maybe if I'm lucky, right? That means 82 or 84, in that range. Midlife crisis, because they realize they're running out of decades and they've been buying a story about what might happen in the future. I remember this because it's connected, I think, to what you're going to talk about all semester, which is when I was 20, my parents still lived in the Houston area. They moved from there now, but they were still in the home I'd gone to junior high and high school at. And I was there for the weekend because, well, I was home from college, and I was out of clean clothes, which meant I had to go home. And I took them all in black bags, and then we'd clean them all the time. And the truth is, my mom would do it, and then I'd take all the clean clothes back. And I will tell you, my freshman year, it was probably 3 or 4 months in, and Mom said, "Well, you're doing some laundry." And I was like, "No, Mom, I bring it all home. I wouldn't want the laundry to get jealous of me doing it poorly. You do it so well." And she said, "Yeah, but you didn't bring your sheets home." I was like, "Oh, yeah, well, how often do you wash those?" Yeah. So apparently 4 months was too long. And so apparently, some change we should embrace and agree to. So I learned that then. I didn't know. That was part of the adulting thing. But about 2 years later, maybe 18 months, I'm in Houston, and it's Sunday, and it's in the afternoon, and I said, okay, it's time for me to be going home. And I meant getting my little 300,000 miles on it Honda Accord and drive back to Austin. And my mom, she knows about the Trammells. We don't talk about things that hurt, but my mother sighed, which is like her dropping an F-bomb, which I've never heard Kay Trammell say. And I've never heard it ever in my life, actually. I've just been told that that's a word that starts with an F, for the record. The university people they're like, it's laughing. It's okay. He's kidding. So she sighs, and then she doesn't say a word, but I watch her sadly walk into her bedroom, which is what my mom did when things get awkward. I don't know what it was like in your house, but that's what happened. Dad had a bit of a temper, and Mom had a bit of an escape from conflict. And so I got formed in that. So she sighed and left. I realized I'd hurt her, but I didn't know how to make it right. So what did I do? I went back to Austin, got in the car, and went home to my apartment. That, by the way, the real world's great there, right? Real world? I wasn't paying for that apartment. My only job was to try to get to my 10 a.m. class. Super real world. That was super real worldish. So I get back to Austin. Months pass, and I get really sick. And I'm coughing, and my friends, I was in a fraternity. If you're going to prodigal, that's the way to do it. And guys were tired of hearing me cough, and so they drove me over to the UT Health Center, and I'm sure there are great people that work there, but not in 1999. And I had 103 temperature, and I'd been coughing for weeks, and I'd been in Houston, and someone in the Tomball area where we lived had meningitis. And so they apparently had if you had some address, you've been in these places, they were worried about that. And so the person comes back in from I don't know if she's a PA or what she was. Anyway, she walked in and she said, we think maybe you have meningitis. If you have viral meningitis, you have this percentage chance of dying. Never looking up. I'm sitting by myself. I'm on the crinkle sandwich paper. I feel terrible, obviously. And I'm just sitting there waiting for, whatever the thing is. And she just says, if you have this viral meningitis, it's this percentage chance of dying. If it's bacterial, it's this percentage chance of dying. We're sending you over to St. David's to get a spinal tap. And then she left the room. I'm sitting there by myself, and I'm like, you feel terrible. And I'm like, I think she said dying. And this was a point at which I thought, and maybe you've been there, I don't know, it was a dark moment where I realized this is when I'm supposed to pray. But it had been a long time since I prayed. I was real involved in church in high school, but like I said, I had asked for what was coming to me, and I went to a foreign land to find a different way to belong and to be cared for because things hurt, and the church seemed busted up. If you caught me, I never said I didn't believe, but I'd been like, I'm not really into organized religion. I work here now, let me tell you, we're not that organized. If you're worried about that, don't worry about it. We're not organized at all. But I was down on it, and I'd seen some of the dark sides of it. I'd seen real pain that other human beings could cause each other in ways I couldn't fathom. I didn't have a way to understand that, so I figured I might as well try to go to a party and feel better about that, which at the time initially felt like fun. The fun faded after a while and just became kind of the way I was living. Anyway, I'm sitting there on the paper, and I'm just crinkling. I'm like, I didn't even know how to pray. I thought I should pray. And I was like, man, if I die, like, what will that mean? I was like, my parents would be sad, mom would sigh, and my dad would be upset. My fraternity brothers would tell stories about me and then get drunk. They get drunk, tell stories about me, and get drunk again. But I remember thinking, like, I don't know that it really matters. I was 20 years old. I'm like, man, okay, we're going to go to this thing. And then I called my mom. So if you're wondering, and that's one of the questions I think is worth talking about over dessert, like the nature of home is really interesting to me. And y'all are in an age in which it seems maybe unsettled, unrooted. Where is home? When somebody asks, where's home? What do you say? And because we bought this lie that somehow it has to be a picket fence and we have to have 2.2 kids and a dog and a mortgage to have a home, then it's someplace back before us maybe. And maybe that's okay, because I called back to my mom because Austin suddenly didn't feel like home. Because now I felt all the fragileness of what it means to be human and everything else. And so I called her and said, hey, Mom, this is what's happening. And I could hear her sigh on the side of the phone. And she said, well, okay, call us and let us know. And I went and got a spinal tap, which is a great way to spend a Tuesday. By the way, that doctor comes out and goes, your cell count and your whatever was 4. And I'm like, and they go, oh, no. And she goes, oh, yeah, you're going to be fine. I was like, that's where you start. I'm 20 and I'm training on this. And so then I got in the car and I went home. Mom made soup, and I felt terrible for a few days. I probably had COVID-3 or whatever it was. And that weekend, of all weekends, Alex and Cullen went down and crossed the border like we used to do all the time. It was fun before 9/11, and it was no big deal. At least it didn't feel like it. And they went across, and we're coming back in the morning, not clear-minded. They swerved into a Suburban coming the other way and died at the scene. 2 of my pledge brothers didn't make it back. I got back just in time to hear the reports of that Sunday. And then we went to their hometowns for funerals and watched their parents grieve. And left a mark on me thinking about what home was, what it means to us, and how we ache to know we belong, particularly like in phases of life like you're in now. It can be really hard, feel really temporary. And so the Luke 10 passage that Reed said I had to talk about, because I love it, and I listen to Reed, and he tells me what to do. Reed is one of the founder guys, and he said, we're going to talk about this all semester if you'll set it up. And I said, okay, well, it all gets set up because, a lawyer, which is what I thought I was going to do when I felt bad at 20, came to Jesus and said, hey, I'd like to know what life is worth living, and I want it forever. And Jesus says, well, you've read the law. You're a lawyer. What does it say there? And he says, well, love the Lord with all you've got and love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus says, you got it. Do that, and you'll be on that pathway for life and life eternal. And there's that great line that I can unfortunately relate to. But wanting to justify himself, the lawyer said, but who is my neighbor? And so then the story unfolds as the Good Samaritan, and other folks will talk about that actual piece. I'm fascinated by the whole turn Jesus puts on the lawyer. He tells a story, which is a Jesus thing to do in response to that question, about the Good Samaritan, and you probably know it. He gets beat up and left for dead, and the 2 guys going by that are supposed to help out, a worship leader and a preacher, have other things to do, and it's the Samaritan, which we lose the impact because we think Good Samaritan is the way good goes, but Samaritan to a first century Jewish person would have sounded like, okay, this is the good Taliban member. This is the good, or if you heard me say Longhorn earlier and that bothered you, it's the good Longhorn, whatever offends you the most. The Samaritans were like the neighbors that like you wanted to ignore. They were kind of like you, enough to be super annoying, and so you wanted to ignore them. They're still Samaritans, by the way. We went there. They worship on Mount Gerizim, not on Mount Zion in Jerusalem. And they have a whole different story about Abraham. And the high priest was there when we were there and walked us around. His grandson was there. His grandson was wicked hungover from the night before, and the high priest was livid. And we were standing out in the sun, and I think he was trying to make the kid throw up. And I was like, this is a different kind of Good Samaritan story right now. But they still do Passover with the flint knife and kill them. It's a whole thing. Anyway, different community with a similar story, but it's the folks that are kind of like you that really can, but not quite. They can really upset you. That's the Samaritans and the Jews. And so Jesus tells a story and then flips back to the lawyer and says, who was the neighbor to the person who got hurt? And in a sense, changes the whole conversation about neighboring from, what's the limit of my responsibility to where do I live in such a way that I know who my neighbor is? Who is a neighbor to me? And I think that goes to our conversation about home, and I wonder if that isn't worth y'all talking about together. Because I think one of the possibilities of the Foundry that I pray for is that you guys create some spaces where people feel like they're at home. But you know what you can't do? Make somebody feel welcome if you don't feel like you belong. And man, do we all struggle with that in this life. I walk in here thinking I'm super old, and I'm sure that I have the wrong clothes on or whatever. And I have those stories, and I think, God's worked on me enough to be like, yeah, okay. I've been a dork for a long time. I'm good with it. And you guys smiled at me, and you even laughed at some of my jokes. You even yelled out at me about smelling bad. That was good. And so I start to feel like maybe these are people who get what I'm about. Maybe I do belong among people of the Foundry in the same way that people can make space at senior tables who are 105 years old can make us belong. So I wonder, when Jesus says you got to love the Lord with all you got, the lawyer does, and Jesus affirms it. It's from Leviticus and from Numbers. And then love God with all you have too. Love the neighbor, love God, these two things. And they're integrated. But I think it's instructive in the whole neighboring business that we all ache to know not only that we're lovable, but that we belong in a place. And you guys, because of technology and the narrative you've been given culturally, maybe me too, have been offered this story of what life looks like that is just around the next corner. Except if we never get around the corner, then we wind up being 60 years old, and that's what they get mad about. They realize that they waited for a life to happen that was living. This today is it. This is your life. It's not waiting to happen. It's not going to occur later. You don't have to do anything else to be in it, and you belong. You belong in God's story, and I don't know what all you've been through. I bet it's something because the world's busted up, and sometimes doctors tell you might be dying when you're not, and sometimes they tell you might be dying when you are. And sometimes car crashes take people that you love. And sometimes we get moved, and now we don't know how we fit in a story. And all the while, we believe deeply and firmly that whether you get waylaid by robbers on a road, or you get moved by your company, or your family leaves, or, as I've walked with folks, when your parents get sick and become in a different place, you start to worry about them, how that alters how you think about yourself. Where do you belong? And where is home? We don't think about having to make it. But that's kind of the invitation. And the great news is that whatever your home life was like growing up, whatever your home life feels like right now, whether it's the Foundry or something else, whether it's your local church or a group of friends that meet to do, trivia. I was trying to think of what all you cool kids do. I'm not invited into stuff. I met the precursor of the Foundry in 2016. I think y'all may have been there. And it was a Tuesday night, and we went to 9 o'clock. And they're like, we're going to the Flying Saucer. Do you want to come? And I was like, yeah, 12 years ago I do. I'm going home. That's what I'm doing. Wherever that is, around different places. I think the ache for community should not be trivialized because I don't think we can talk about neighboring without having a home. And that home may have walls and be a house, but it may be a space and a circle of friends that tell the truth and love each other anyway. It may be a place of service and love across the city that is divided deeply north and south. It may be a culture that's pulled apart and has lots of stories about how, it was pretty good until you Zoomers and millennials got in the way. By the way, I was around before that. It wasn't great. We watched Stranger Things. Kenan was like, where are their parents? And I was like, it was like that, dude. That's how it was. They didn't know where I was. We were doing bottle rocket wars. I wasn't, fighting a Demogorgon or whatever, but in the books I was reading, because I didn't have any friends, but that's enough about me. when the lawyer wants to justify himself, he doesn't want to actually be connected. He says he wants this life that'll last. He wants a life that's good. That's not really what he wants. He wants to be right. I'm tempted to want to be right sometimes. Nothing wrong with trying to be accurate or get things right. But if what you really want is community, then that's other people. What if you really want is what God really wants, is that the invitation's not just me and Jesus or you and Jesus, it's us together. Paul says we're a body, which is really, really knit together. And Jesus says, don't let your hearts be troubled. Man, are there reasons to have your heart troubled, whether you're 18 or 80 in this world? You guys have more information about what's wrong in the world than any generation that has ever been. The mental health stuff that I'm reading from like high school kids up through like young adulthood is stunning. The most weight gain in the pandemic, millennials, by a huge margin. I didn't mean to be on the nose with the huge thing. I'm not mocking it. I'm saying like the health ramifications outside of just the virus for young people have been enormous. And then, I don't know if you noticed, but there's deep divisions in culture and in politics. There are questions about whether the economy will be for you what it was for your grandparents or parents. There's all kinds of reasons to be worried. And Jesus says, don't let your hearts be troubled. Why? Believe in me. That is, that the one who has promised this good life will provide it. I go to prepare a place for you. If it were not so, I wouldn't tell you that. And then I like Peter a lot, but Thomas is my dude. And Jesus says, you know the place where I'm going. And Thomas goes, no, we don't. Nobody here knows. We don't know where you're going, so we certainly don't know how to get there. That's a rough translation of the Greek. And then Jesus says, yeah, Thomas, you do, because you know me. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. And in this house of my Father's, there are many rooms. He doesn't say, as the old hymns used to say, that there's a mansion far away for you to have in your suburban sprawl of heaven. By the way, Lewis gets this right. The sprawl is in hell, not in heaven. When he says, in my Father's house there are many rooms, he means in the Father's family there's a place. So maybe your family of origin didn't steward you. Maybe there was worse than sighing and escaping in your house. I don't know. But I know that there's a place for you at the table. I know that there's a place for you with Jesus where you belong because he loved you before you had a name, before you had a hurt, before you'd messed up, before you'd wondered if you'd ever fit in. He said, you fit in with me. And I think it's really important here, and bless all those other clergy that have come before and other people that have told the gospel. I heard it too. I heard John 14 as Jesus with his arm crossed saying, nobody comes to the Father except through me. I've been working hard not to do that as John Wayne, by the way, so that was pretty close to not being John Wayne. I don't know who that was, like Sean Penn. I don't know what that pensive thing was. But like the bouncer Jesus, right? No one's getting in unless you get the ticket. See there, John Wayne, did you hear it on the end? It started to happen. I fought it and I didn't get through it. But I don't think that's it at all. It's Jesus is speaking to people like Thomas who don't know where to go and don't know the way. And if you want to know it, you know me and I'm for you. I've made a place for you. There's a feast set before you. And you might be surprised at who comes around the table. And you might be called to pull out a chair for neighbors. But it's hard to say, hey, sit here with me and Jesus until you know you belong there too. So my deep hope and prayer for you tonight is as you reflect on what home means and who made you feel at home, that you look for models and mentors of spiritual discipline. We talk about hospitality. Sometimes we think about people who are like really good at, hotel management. That's the professional side of that. It's a spiritual discipline, making people feel welcome. It is a powerful thing that we've often separated from the real calling of the gospel. And I will end with that, which is always a dangerous preaching thing to say, which means I might go 20 more minutes. I'm not going to. We lived on a street, and the Burgers lived next to us. And Jim Berger was Catholic, like his sister was a nun Catholic. And Jim Berger loved to barbecue. Jim Berger had a refrigerator and a freezer in his garage. One was filled with malted barley. I don't know. I don't want to offend any. My wife's Church of Christ, so I don't want to offend anybody here tonight. It's beer. And the other one was like popsicles for the neighborhood kids. And so if we couldn't find our kids, they were always in the Burger's yard eating a popsicle. And if my wife couldn't find me, I was with Jim Berger having lemonade. And so Jim would throw a block party on Quarter Path every opportunity. Not just like July 4th, like Flag Day. I didn't even know Flag Day existed. Nicely done. Is that right? Fantastic. Excellent. Well, I hope the flags stay all the way up. So, yeah, there we go. I kind of walked into the syntax there. I apologize. Groundhog Day we just had, which is, my favorite holiday. And so anytime he would have the barbecue pit out, he would have all out in the driveway, and everybody was welcome. The whole neighborhood would come by. If you knew where we lived right next door, it was amazing. It made it better to live there. My kids were more blessed. They're circuit grandpas, my parents. And I told Jim, Jim, your ability to neighbor is a gift of the God. And he goes, oh, man, that's nice to say, but no, it isn't. We're drinking, right? And I was like, yeah, I'm aware that you're drinking. And I thought, wow, what a way we've told the story. That the good life only happens for an hour on Sunday among people who are sitting up in a pew, listening to somebody else talk, with their shirt tucked in and their spiritual Spanx on real tight, so they can act like they're not a mess, they don't hurt, their hearts aren't broken, that the wife hasn't been tough to them. And Jim, people feel welcome here. Help me do that at church, folks. And I'll tell you, when this broke open for me, I was reading a book on neighboring, literally in my backyard. And we lived we backed up to the levee there because it floods. And so there's a levee behind the house. Jim lived next door to the other side. I'm reading the book on neighboring, like how to neighbor and how to inspire the church to neighbor. And I'm reading this book, and I look up, and Jim Berger was mowing the grass behind my house. And I thought, I keep reading all these books to figure out the thing that Jim does because that's who he is. And who is my neighbor? Well, your neighbor is the person who lives next door to you when you're home. And home is a place where you rest, where you're loved, and where you belong. And if you don't feel that, God's inviting you to a space where you can. And it may be that y'all are going to make it together. And that would be a holy, sacred, heaven-reclaiming dirt thing. And if you really, really want to make the boomers mad, do that. That would be awesome, and I would cheer for you the whole way. So that nobody wakes up in San Antonio believing there isn't a space for them at the table. Nobody believes that mercy and hope aren't for them. Nobody thinks that they're not worth living next to. Who's your neighbor? Where is home? Where have you seen it done well, and where have you seen it where neighboring looks way more like locked gates and broken promises, so that we might learn well from Christ, who says, yeah, there's room. Invite your friends. Tell your neighbors. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for tonight, for the invitation to neighbor, to be home in you, whether we're walking through the valley of the shadow or we are living in joy and promise. Lord, teach us that today, this moment, in this place, you're here. And we don't have to grow up or get to a place or earn a spot, that home is, in fact, available to us in a place where we belong and are rested. And then, Lord, as we find it, as we experience it with you, would you teach us how to share it? Would you teach us both that we are neighbors and to neighbor? It's in your name we pray. Amen.